The conference room was full of people as I looked at my phone. Its screen lit up with an incoming call from Tyler. I stepped out into the hallway, expecting the typical casual chat. "How's the trip? When are you coming home?" However, Tyler's voice sounded cold and arrogant. "I'm divorcing you," he said in an almost triumphant tone. "I've already sold the apartment. So you'll have to decide where you're going to live. Enjoy that." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The audacity of his words, the complete lack of remorse, was almost laughable. My hand tightened around the phone as his words sank in. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Yes," he replied with a dry laugh. "Nicole and I need the money to set up our life together. She deserves something better than a place as small as that anyway." Nicole. Although hearing her name hurt, I had suspected for months that there was someone else. Tyler's long nights out, his sudden business trips, and the growing distance between us all pointed to a third person. But hearing him say her name so casually, as if I were the intruder in his life, made something burn in my chest. "Sounds good," I responded calmly. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of hearing me break. "My name is Amelia. And until that call, I believed I was married to a man I could trust." Tyler and I had been together for 6 years. Although our relationship wasn't perfect, I always thought we were building something solid. We had worked hard to buy our apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom place in the city that I loved from the moment I saw it. It wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of what we had built together. Or at least that's what I thought. Looking back, I realized the signs, the cracks in the foundation. I had ignored Tyler's dismissive attitude whenever I asked him about finances. He always brushed away my concerns with a charming smile and a quick kiss. Now I understood that his dismissal didn't come from not knowing what he was doing, but from knowing he could manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I sat in meetings, nodding at the right moments while my mind raced. Tyler thought he had won, that he could strip me of what we had built together and come out unscathed. But there was a crucial detail he didn't know: the deed to the apartment was in my name. I had transferred it months ago after refinancing earlier in the year. Tyler, confident as ever, had agreed to sign the papers without even reading them. His carelessness was going to be his downfall. That night in my hotel room, my surprise turned into resolve. I wasn't going to cry or beg. If Tyler wanted a fight, that was fine. This was a fight I was going to win. I called Chloe, my lawyer and lifelong friend. I explained the situation in detail, my voice calm even as my pulse raced. "He sold the apartment," she repeated, incredulous. "Does he realize he can't do that without your consent?" "Apparently not," I replied, a hint of amusement in my tone. Tyler believed he had already spent the money on his new life with Nicole. Chloe let out a dry laugh. "Well, he's in for a rude awakening. The sale is not valid. You can claim exclusive ownership. And if he's taken money from the buyer, he could face fraud charges." The word fraud gave me a jolt of satisfaction. "What do we do now?" I asked. "First, we'll notify the buyer that the sale isn't legal," Chloe said. "Then we'll draft a formal letter for Tyler outlining the consequences of his actions. If he tries anything else, we'll take him to court." When I hung up, I felt a strange calm. Tyler thought he had defeated me, but he had only set the stage for his final humiliation. I spent the rest of the trip focusing on my work, compartmentalizing my emotions, and channeling my energy into what was coming. The betrayal hurt, but the prospect of reclaiming my life and seeing Tyler's lies crumble gave me a purpose I hadn't felt in months. When I boarded the plane back home, I was ready to face Tyler, dismantle his lies, and start a new chapter without him. This wasn't just about winning, it was about regaining control. I took a deep breath and set my suitcase on the floor, knowing the confrontation would come soon. Indeed, Tyler arrived furious that night, his face red with rage and his phone clutched in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, waving the letter Chloe had sent him. "Are you telling me I can't sell the apartment? Half of it is mine." "No, Tyler," I said calmly, crossing my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something that doesn't belong to you." His face froze, a mixture of confusion and rage. "What are you talking about?" I pulled the deed from the file I had prepared earlier and showed it to him. After the refinance. The deed was in my name. You signed it. Remember? Or did you just skim through the paperwork without reading it? As you always do. For a moment. He said nothing. Then his expression twisted into a sneer. You think you're so clever. Don't you? This changes nothing. I've already made a deal. And you'll look like a fool when it all falls apart. I looked at him without blinking. The sale is void. Tyler. The buyer knows it. And they're willing to take legal action if you don't return the money. Oh. And speaking of money. I stepped closer. Lowering my voice. If you've spent a single cent of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble. Tyler's confidence wavered for the first time. You don't know what you're talking about, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. Oh. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I replied firmly. You've spent years treating me like I was too naive to notice what you do. But guess what? Tyler, I've been paying attention. And now you're going to deal with the consequences. His frustration began to mount. This is ridiculous. You're ruining everything. You can't just kick me out of here. I raised an eyebrow. Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay here for now. But only because I'm giving you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move. But let me be clear. I'm not going anywhere. In the following days, Tyler's anger turned into desperation. He called me repeatedly, leaving frantic voicemails that alternated between pleas and threats. Meanwhile, Chloe worked behind the scenes, making sure all the loose ends were tied up. The buyer rescinded the agreement. Furious with Tyler for wasting their time and money, Chloe also drafted the preliminary documents for the divorce. You're in a good position, she told me during a meeting. Tyler has no leverage here. Between the annulled sale and the potential fraud charges. He'll have to cooperate if he wants to avoid a bigger mess. Her words were a relief. But they also reminded me of how much I had allowed Tyler to control my life for years. I had ignored his disdain and arrogance, telling myself it wasn't worth fighting for. But now I saw how much I had been giving up. And I was determined to get it all back. Laura, my best friend, came over one night to help me reorganize the apartment. We packed up Tyler's things and stacked them neatly in the corner of the living room. How's he taking all of this? She asked, holding up one of his ties with a mocking smile. Not well, I replied, laughing in spite of myself. He's still convinced he can get out of this. But I'm not budging. Good, she said, throwing the tie into a box. He doesn't deserve a single bit of your space or time. I nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude for her support. I had carried the emotional and financial burden for years while Tyler took credit for everything. But now I had the right people on my side. And that made all the difference. The end came when Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining room table reviewing some papers when they walked in, acting as if they were the owners of the place. Nicole looked around with a smug smile. Her arm linked in Tyler's. So, this is where we'll be staying, she said, her voice full of entitlement. I stood up, my heart pounding, but my determination unwavering. No, Nicole. This is where Tyler is staying for now. You, on the other hand, will not be staying here at all. Her smile faltered, and she looked at Tyler, who looked equally stunned. What is this? Tyler demanded. This, I said, gesturing towards the apartment, is my home. Not yours. Not hers. And certainly not a hotel for you to stay in after stabbing me in the back. Nicole's expression turned icy, but she didn't say anything. Tyler, on the other hand, looked like he was about to explode. You can't do this, he shouted. You're being unreasonable. No, Tyler. What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my house, keep the money, and expect me to just give up. You're lucky I haven't filed criminal charges yet. His facade finally cracked. He knew he had lost. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had won. Without saying another word, Nicole turned and stormed out, leaving him standing there, dumbfounded. I couldn't help but smile as the door closed behind her. Looks like you're on your own now, I said, turning back to Tyler. Now, let's talk about what happens next. Tyler slumped onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. Amelia. Please, I know. But you don't have to do this. I finished, taking a folder from the kitchen counter and placing it on the coffee table in front of him. I don't have to do this. But I will. These are the divorce papers. My lawyer already drafted them. And I suggest you sign them quickly. The sooner you do, the sooner we can move on. He stared at the folder, his face pale. Do you really hate me that much? Hate you? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Tyler. I don't hate you. What I feel for you is pity. You had everything. Someone who loved you. A home we built together. And you threw it all away because of your selfishness. I stood firm. Even though my heart was pounding. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your things and figure out where you're going to stay. This is the last time I'm giving you any grace. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Okay, he murmured. Everything will be fine. I replied, walking towards the door. And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe is already handling everything. And if you cross the line again, I won't hesitate to let the courts take care of you. As I opened the door, Tyler slowly stood up, grabbed his coat, and left without looking at me, his steps heavy and laden with defeat. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. Not for him, but for the life we could have had if he had been the man I thought he was. But that moment quickly passed, replaced by a deep sense of relief. I closed the door behind him and made sure it was locked. The space was no longer weighed down by his presence, his sense of entitlement, or his lies. It was just me, the home I had built, and the quiet understanding that I had one, not just against him, but against every doubt I had ever had about standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the emptiness where his things had been, his enormous gaming chair, the framed t-shirts that cluttered the walls, and the horrendous coffee table he insisted on keeping. It was all gone. The apartment looked cleaner, brighter, like it was mine again. That night, Lauren arrived with takeout and a bottle of wine. He's really gone, she asked, collapsing onto the sofa with a dramatic sigh. He's gone. And he's not coming back, I said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things. And he did it. Lauren raised her glass. To new beginnings and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past weeks slowly lift. I would never let anyone walk all over me again. In the following days, I started reclaiming every corner of the apartment. I rearranged the furniture, hung my favorite artwork in the living room, and filled the space with things that made me happy. It wasn't just about redecorating, it was about turning the apartment into a reflection of who I was. Not the person Tyler had tried to mold me into. Chloe kept me updated on the legal proceedings. Her voice, full of confidence, made me feel invincible. The fraud charges are off the table. As the buyer decided not to pursue it, she explained. But the divorce paperwork is moving smoothly. Once Tyler signs, you'll officially be free. Hearing the word free made my chest tighten. It wasn't just the divorce, it was everything I had carried for years. The resentment, the self-doubt, the feeling of being trapped. All of that was finally lifting. Tyler tried to contact me several times. His messages ranged from half-hearted apologies to pathetic attempts to manipulate me. I made a mistake. Can't we at least talk about this? One said. You're going to ruin me. Amelia. Is that what you want? Another read. But I didn't respond. For the first time. I wasn't going to waste my energy on something that was broken beyond repair. He had made his choices. And now he faced the consequences. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a completely new place. Warm and entirely mine. As I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea, watching the city lights, I thought about everything that had happened. Tyler's betrayal had been a shock, but also a wake-up call. For too long, I had convinced myself that I didn't deserve anything better. But now I knew that I wasn't just getting my apartment back, I was getting my life back.